We are surrounded by sounds in our daily lives. They are part of our routines and serve as a stimulus towards which we react. Notwithstanding, in nowadays society, sounds are usually heard. We become aware of a sound through our ears, not really paying attention to it but just receiving it passively. But what if we listen to them? What would these sounds tell us about the world around us and how we interact with it, or about ourselves? This is Henry David Thoreau, an American philosopher and social activist who was born in 1817 and died in 1862 in Concord, Massachusetts. Thoreau was renowned for following the principles and ideologies of transcendentalism. This movement was a 19th century philosophical and literary movement where a group of writers in New England were very well connected to an idealistic system of beliefs that highlight intuition over sensory experiences. Thoreau was deeply influenced by these ideas, and on July 4, 1845, he moved to a forest near Walden Pond, which surrounds Concord, Massachusetts. Thoreau moved there as a social experiment to prove whether he could live only with the necessary things while he could live deliberately, or in other words, to live with a lucid conscience in a respectful relation to nature and his surroundings. There, he wrote the memoir Walden or Life in the Woods, where he composed his everyday observations and reflections that fulfilled him as a result of his detachment to life.
In the essay Sounds, it is possible to observe how labor, understood by Thoreau as those tasks that provide him with what he considers the essential, is at the root of the issue of alienation from nature. Progress had come with a series of changes in society, which involved a shift in the view of necessities. As he describes in the essay Economy, the necessaries of life for a man in this climate may be distributed under the several heads of food, shelter, clothing, and fuel. For not till we have secured these are we prepared to entertain the true problems of life with freedom and a prospect of success. He describes how society has been adding up more necessities to those listed as the essential ones, and how these new necessities, or the so-called comforts of life, are not only not indispensable, but possibly hindrances to the elevation of mankind. This statement is the key to Thoreau's mindset, as he describes labor as the reason for this estrangement from nature, and therefore the human mind. Hence, it is labor that modifies one's perspective on such a source of self-reflection as nature is, even for those who are constantly in contact with nature and know well about it, such as the farmers. In Thoreau's words, I have frequently seen a poet withdraw, having enjoyed the most valuable part of a farm, while the crusty farmer supposed that he had got a few wild apples only. Why, the owner does not know it for many years when a poet has put his farm into rhyme, has fairly impounded it, milked it, and skimmed it, and got all the cream, and left the farmer only the skimmed milk. Farmers are obliged to work the land. It is their source of income and what will provide them with what they need to live according to the values of his period. And it is this perspective of nature, this view of it at the service of humankind, that prevents them from seeing in nature a source of inspiration, a place in which they can learn about themselves. It is in observation and listening, in opening one's senses to the world, that one can find its true self. Thoreau's experiment was to remove himself from the way everyone around him was living, to discover just what living was for. During his stimulating time in Walden Pond, Thoreau built a cabin with his own hands, and every day he noticed small but new patterns which made him reflect about life, nature, and his surroundings. There's a lot of physical sensation in Thoreau's words in a way that we, as readers, are able to hear, smell, and almost taste Thoreau's words, as he one day says, I heard the fresh and tender bough suddenly fall like a fan to the ground, when there was not a breath of air, stirring, broken off by its own weight. He finds pleasure in the sounds that fill his cabin, walks, and above all, in nature. I was also serenaded by a hooting owl. Near at hand you could fancy it the most melancholy sound in nature. Despite being detached from civilization, he could hear the industrialized sounds, which inevitably break Thoreau's meditations. He compares industrialization to agitation, anxiousness, and the bustling metropolis, and how its sounds are capable of interrupt the process of self-reflection and erupt in his mind. Now that the cars are gone by and all the restless war with them, and the fish in the pond no longer feel their rumbling, I am more alone than ever. For the rest of the long afternoon, perhaps, my meditations are interrupted only by the faint rattle of a carriage or team along the distant highway.
We live in a restless world, which firmly commands us to be restless, active, accelerated. We are constantly going back and forth, from one place to another, always keeping an eye on the ticking of the clock so as not to lose time. As the common saying indicates, time is gold. We are expected to do more, to work harder, to try harder, to be better. Little by little, we have adapted to this chaotic, rapid lifestyle. Moreover, with the development of new technologies, we do not pay attention to what is around us because either we do not have enough time or we are hooked on our screens. We do not take notice of our surroundings. It is an overwhelming situation. Nevertheless, what would happen if we stop our work for a minute and listen? What sounds can we hear? What is the earth telling us with these sounds? Had we listened to nature, catastrophes like the Dana's flood would not have happened. How can we listen to nature? The whistle of the wind, pouring rain, thunder, the streams of water flowing rapidly through the streets. But when it is too late, then the unimaginable comes, nature imposing itself over civilization.